Hello and good afternoon. This beautiful Friday. We are here on the 25th episode of this Safello Show, and this is the last episode of this season. And this is a special episode because, as you can see, there is no Frank here, and this is me, Matt Broniarek, who is gonna host and I think very interesting and insightful episode with our partner. But I will get to that just in a second. Before I get to that, I want to show, of course, what is this show sponsored by. So the Safello Show is sponsored obviously by Safello. You can go to safello.com. We have an offering for retail customers, for business customers, and for institutional customers. So you can go to safello.com. You can see all the beautiful things on our website. And if you scroll down, you can see all our social channels, including Discord, which is a very, very good way to communicate with our team, with management, and with each other. On the top, we can see links to retail business offering and also for institutions. But without the further ado, I would like to introduce my guest today. We will be talking with a representative from the company called Chainalysis, and my guest is Daniel Haj. Daniel is not only my friend, but he's also a brilliant guy and works for an incredible company that does a lot of good things and makes the crypto space safer and better place for all of us. Daniel, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
So Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself before we start digging into the subject. The subject of our episode today is to show a little bit about the traceability of blockchain, to show that the blockchain is not just a big black hole where money goes in and nobody knows what's happening with the money. We will prove that this is not true, and we will show also some data statistics. But please start with just yourself.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That all sounds good to me. As you just mentioned there, my name is Daniel Haj. I'm born and raised in Sweden, currently living in London, been out with Chainalysis for about a year and a half. And I work in our customer success team, meaning that I'm responsible for the success of our customers, essentially. That's everything from the onboarding, making sure that they have all they need, all the training, all the education required to be successful with the products, but also providing them with a bit more data points, as well as help them throughout the life cycle and also act as the voice of the customer internally here. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So let me pull here on the screen. This is Chainalysis, sure. Right? So what is this all about? Because Chainalysis, this is not a retail customer facing product. So what is the whole buzz about the Chainalysis who gets, how to say that, praise in a lot of places in the crypto space, but nobody really knows about it, at least not in the retail space. So what is it all about?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess to understand that, we have to do a little bit of history check here. I'm not going to go through all the history, but if we go back to 2014, there was a notorious hack. Some of the listeners might remember the Mt. Gox hack, where it was the largest crypto exchange at the time, based out of Japan. And they lost, I think it was 750,000 Bitcoins of their customers, as well as 100,000 of their own. I think it equated to about 500 million at the time. In today's money will be roughly, well, now there's a market crash, but roughly about under 18 billion. So to tell a long story short, our co-founder and CEO, Michael Groninger, he was the CEO at Kraken at the time. And he flew out to Japan, see what he could do, put his bright mind together, and understood that actually blockchain is public ledger, right? The data is out there, not very human readable, which we'll talk about in a second, but there is things that we can do. So ultimately, they started working on that. They were able to successfully help both law enforcement as well as the business itself. And after that, they saw that there is actually a need for crypto to truly go mainstream, and for it to be adopted by the likes of banks, financial institutions, but also respected by regulators and governments, that we need some level of analytics, or I should say traceability, to ensure that we are all safe. And as the slogan goes, building trust in blockchains. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't trust the blockchain itself, right? Why trust when you can verify, which is the whole ethos of blockchain, right? But we want to trust the actors on the blockchain. So that is what they set up to do. And since then, there's been a number of high-profile cases, some that I can talk about, some that I can't. But I think one of the big ones, which is public knowledge, is Welcome to Video, which was at the time the largest child pornography site hosted out of Korea. And yeah, we were very successful helping law enforcement taking that down. And our other co-founder, Jonathan Levin, actually said that even if our company were to cease to exist today, let's say we go bankrupt, which I don't believe we are, but let's say that one case would have been worth it. And I truly believe in that.
I can definitely relate. And as I mentioned, Safello is proud to partner up with Chainalysis to your tools are helping us not only be compliant, but actually know what's going on the blockchain, right? So the cases, as you said, with the child pornography, they are very, very delicate, but very important. But that's not the only area. The Chainalysis helps us see what's going on the blockchain. So, but before we get to the details, right?
Sure.
We will have people here in the audience who, some of them, they understand quite well how it works. Some of them are not very familiar with the traceability and what you can actually see on the blockchain. So let's go a few steps back.
Certainly.
And
absolutely.
Let's talk about the blockchain. So if you go to Blockchain Explorer, you can see strings of weird letters, and digits, which are called wallets. There are hashes. Like, how can you possibly know what's going on the blockchain with those weird squiggly lines?
Yeah, no, good point. And I think when the white paper was written by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008, he's referring to it as an anonymous payment peer-to-peer processor, right? But actually, what we would argue is that it's pseudo-anonymous, right? It is open source. It's there for anyone to audit at any time. But as you mentioned, it's not very human readable, right? So what are we doing about that? We are taking those addresses. We are what we call, using our proprietary technologies and techniques. And some of the most brilliant minds in the industry that I ever met helped us build a tool which actually makes this human readable. Now, what I mean by that is that we cluster together. So we take the addresses, take the wallets, cluster them, and put named entities. And when I say named entities, I do not mean any personal, identifiable information, PII. We do not want any of that. We're just interested in what is the category, what is the risk level, and then we will help companies like yourselves, other crypto exchanges, other banks, financial institutions, and also governments to be able to trace that and find the flow of money.
Perfect.
So just depends how you define money. Yeah.
Just to visualize what I mean, for those who are not aware, if you go to Blockchain Explorer, and by the way, I just opened the recent transaction, totally random. I have no idea what that is, right? It just happened. It's not even confirmed yet. But what I wanted to see, to show you here in the audience, that's what we can see. Those are these letters and digits, and you can't possibly make sense out of that. And the power of Chainalysis is that you have your technology, which is incredible, and you make sense out of that, right? Important to highlight what you mentioned is that you never know that, this is Daniel behind this address and Matt behind this address. But for example, you can see that the transaction left Safello and went somewhere, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
So with this introduction to traceability of the blockchain, we established that blockchain is not a black hole where nobody knows what's happening. We know that there are tools to analyze the blockchain. So if you were to kind of say, what is the most important area here for you? Is it just to gather the data? Is it to fight crime? Is it to work with the police, with governments? What's the most important area for the company like Chainalysis when you're analyzing the data?
Yeah, I think it's quite a multifaceted one. I think depending on the vertical that I work with, and I'm one of the fortunate ones that have the chance to work with all of the verticals. So I think depending on where you look at it, is it for investigation purposes? Is it for compliance workflows? Is it for risk mitigation? And so forth. Depending on where you sit, depending on what your role is, we will have slightly different products and data, provided to you. But I think ultimately, and I will keep saying this, it's building trust in blockchains, right? We want to make sure that everyone that operates, using blockchains, using any assets, tokens, even DeFi protocols or NFTs, that they can feel comfortable that they are not getting involved in any illicit activity. And that's both for retail, right? Knowing that they are not getting funds that are tainted down the line, but equally for businesses. We know the scrutiny that, businesses within this space can get and face, and there are, yeah. And I think the ultimate goal here is really the mission, as we say, is really to just make a safer ecosystem and be able for a lot of people to participate. I think the misconception sometimes is that, we are a surveillance company, we track, but that's not the case. And I truly believe that without tools like ours, we wouldn't have seen the adoption that we're seeing right now. And I don't think, whether government or, businesses will be comfortable dealing with something that, as you said, there is a black hole or a black box.
Yeah, and I can absolutely agree to that from our perspective as an exchange that's working mostly with the retail customer, right? We would really have a very hard time operating in the regulated environment and like existing within the Swedish jurisdiction without a tool like Chainalysis. Just when was that? 2 days ago, we fortunately, rightfully so, we closed the audit from Finansinspektion, where I treat it as a testament to this, that we are doing something good, and we are doing this good with the tools like yours, right? So
huge success story. That
yeah, thank you for that. So that's you working with Safello, and in the global scale, where is Chainalysis right now? Congrats for the recent closing of the new founding round. So where's Chainalysis now?
Yeah, I can say it's been incredible to see a company grow in this hyperscale format. Like it's I can't even compare it with any of my previous employers, where a year and a half ago, I think we were about just under 200. Today we are above 700. So that tells you a little bit about the growth, right? And going from just becoming a unicorn around 1 billion to now being above 8 billion in valuation. But of course, with that comes a lot more responsibility, comes a lot more, what should I say? We're not done here yet, right? And now we got some funding, of course, but now it's up to us to prove that, taking the next step, of course, into a safer, enabling more crypto businesses, enabling more banks and financial institutions, actually enabling anyone who wants to interact with cryptocurrencies or blockchains to have that, framework laid out, or at least having the right tools and data in order to be successful.
So what's the roadmap like with the new funds, new round? Is there some roadmap that you want to use these funds to build something new, or is just to keep growing in this hyper growth state?
Sure. I think obviously, as we grow, as we're getting more customers, I think now we are in 70 countries with 750 customers. So with that, of course, a lot of it will go to headcounts, and that is a large part of it. But then also we are focusing a lot on our R&D. A couple of the tools there are in the making. We may discuss that a little bit later, because we're seeing new techniques. When I joined, even just a year and a half ago, the emergence of DeFi, it was there, but not to the extent that we see today, right? We didn't see, NFTs at the same volume as we're doing today. So we are in need of creating new capabilities, and I'm very pleased to say that we have something called Storyline, which is in the making, currently in a beta, but very interested to see that direction.
We are all waiting for it. So I'm personally very excited to see that tool to be able to. It's also very nice to see the evolvement with the product, right? Because I don't think there is any other industry that evolves as fast as cryptocurrencies. Like it seems like every other day, especially in the recent year, it seems like every other day when you open the news, there is something new and something new and something new, and it's incredible to see that the tool like yours, which is already like a behemoth, like a leader in the market, can adjust as fast together with the market. So I'm really happy to see that on your end. But where I want this conversation to go, maybe let's not dwell on these investigations and your tools, because that's proprietary. Like we don't want to get that. But apart from those tools that companies like ours and governments are using, you also collect a lot of data, right? You know in and out what's going on the blockchains.
Yeah.
And fortunately for the whole ecosystem, you're publishing this data. So you constantly produce some kind of reports that we see the data on the blockchain. So personally, one of my favorites is the crypto crime report, which you released. I don't remember when it was released,
February,
but it was for in February you released for 2021. I wanted to talk about that because there is this very common misconception that crypto is used for illegal stuff. So if you're trying to do something bad, just do it in crypto because nobody knows, right? And the data that you actually collect shows something quite opposite. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. And it's a very good point. There is a very common misconception that crypto is just for illicit activity, right? But in the report, as I'm sure you read, and happily leave any notes, show notes to if anyone wants to download it, it's readily available. But ultimately, what we saw is that yes, the volume, the dollar value as such, grew to a new all-time high, I should say. But the overall percentage, we just hit an all-time low. Now, why is that? Because out of all the 15.8 trillion transactions that we mapped out and followed, only about 0.15% was directly involved with illicit activity. And that is up from, down, I should say. Let me just check my notes so I'm not misquoting it here now. I believe that was down from around 0.3%. Yeah. Oh, you got it there. Perfect.
Let's see it here, right? So
Yeah,
first this general, like the value, right? That we are at the last year we were at the level of $14 billion, of illicit activities on the blockchain, which grew significantly from the year before. But so people look at this, okay, it's growing, the value of the illicit transaction is growing. But then if you scroll down just a little bit, you see that if you take it in the perspective of all the transactions on the blockchain that are happening, with all the you could imagine that with all the adoption of crypto, not only regular people are getting into crypto, but also some illicit organizations are also getting into crypto. So you could expect that it would grow together, which is not the case, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And apart from 2019 there, which is an anomaly, we can see that there is a sharp decline here. And moreover, it's important to note as well, this is what we gathered from 2021. Now, this figure could very well increase, right? As we find new cases, working with law enforcement and crypto exchanges predominantly, we get some new insights and maybe discover things that we may not have known before. But that's the estimated figure as of now. And I'm very pleased to say that the overarching majority of activity that happens on the blockchain is fully legitimate.
Yeah. And when I have some kind of presentation or talk to, usually when I talk to traditional finance people, let's say, I love to compare this data because we are in Sweden, and we know, like, when was that, last year or before that, there was released this case through SVT, where one of the most important Swedish banks, the case of money laundering through their accounts, and I believe the size of the case was around $8 billion, right? Just one bank in one small country of Sweden, it was around $8 billion. And here we can see that it was 7.8 billion in 2020. It grew it grew to 14 billion, but it's the global cryptocurrency market. So I'm not sure how many insights you have, like, to compare the size of the entire illicit activities or money laundering in the entire ecosystem compared to this, what it seems to be a tiny bit just done on the cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to distinguish that between illicit activity that we can attribute to darknet market, scams, terrorism, etc. But money laundering per se is an interesting one. And in the report, we are saying that 8.6 billion were attributed to money laundering. Now, to your point there, that was just one Swedish bank, right? And overall, that equates to 0.005% of the total illicit activity on the blockchain, right? However, UN estimates that about 5% of fiat, i.e., nation state-backed central banks currencies, are in closer to 5%, right? So there is a pretty big gap there between 0.005% and 5%. That we see the difference between. Yeah.
I think there was this released data from was it UN or I think it was UN where they estimated
UN
it
Office
was
of Drugs and Crime estimates.
Exactly. The number was around $1 trillion of illicit activities globally just in 1 year, compared to those values here that we can see on the blockchain. So I really wanted to highlight this distinction between the cryptocurrencies and the traditional finance, which is very, very misrepresented, especially in media and the traditional finance, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Worth noting there, however, is that what we attribute is on-chain money laundering, right? So we do not know if someone has laundered money before, on-ramped it onto crypto and then passed it onward. So, again, I'm sure that there are cases there as well that might not be visible to us, but still the overarching figure is very different. And it's a big gap between traditional fiat and cryptocurrencies, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So this illicit activities here on general statistics is one thing, but you have the report itself is 140 pages, so you have tons of data. What else? Give us some interesting facts from your reports, from the data that you can see on the blockchain.
Yeah, I think one of the big surprise, well, I shouldn't say surprises for us, but for maybe the wider audience here, is that we saw the emergence of DeFi, as I mentioned earlier. And whereas we've previously seen centralized exchanges being prone to, hacks, thefts, etc., now is actually the overarching majority is happening in DeFi, where scams and rug pulls and the likes are taking precedence. I think, we could just mention a couple of those recent ones where the wormhole attack, I think that was 300 plus million. And the Axie Infinity and Ronin case now, which was above 600 million, which are, of course, whopping figures, which you don't see in centralized exchanges anymore.
So do you see this as a tendency that will grow in the importance in the future? So actually this DeFi problem will grow. So this problem of hacks will move from centralized exchanges like Safello to the decentralized exchanges or any other dApps.
Yeah, I think we have to distinguish between the hacks as well, because on one hand you have hacks, right? Social engineered hacks, or it could be a centralized, a DDoS attack. It could be various types of attacks. Whereas in DeFi, a lot of the time it's actually exploitation of the code, right? So it's a breaches in the smart contract that they find, and they basically take advantage of that. So I think for the industry, especially the DeFi space, I do not call necessarily for more regulations, but I call for maybe stricter, development background, patch testing essentially, for us to be able to be safer there. DeFi by its nature is of course decentralized, right? They don't need in the most current form, right? Of course, we are now looking at JP Morgan and others entering the space, which will include some level of, KYC and KYT, which we call know your transactions. And we also provide DeFi pool monitoring, where we can essentially base, what's the riskiness of this pool? If you want to interact with that one, and maybe if there is high risk exposure, maybe you should avoid that. So I think that is something that the team is working very hard on. I know the product team has been very, very busy, and that all comes from industry demands, right? And that wasn't there a year ago, or certainly not 2 years ago.
Yeah, as I said, you are moving alongside the industry. It's like the industry is definitely going into those directions, and you're following that. And I think it's brilliant, right? You need to adjust. So I'm looking forward to more products from your end towards the DeFi space. I think it's super interesting. What else can you tell us? I know that, for example, you have the part of the whole report is the geography and different continents, countries. So since we know that we have here Nordic audience, Swedish audience, maybe share with us some statistics that you can see that are based in our neighborhood here.
Sure. So funny enough, I just checked that out of curiosity there. So starting with Sweden, when we're looking at inflows, so total inflows, and this could be, someone sending to a wallet, someone buying on an exchange like yours. It could be, illicit activities. It could be anything, right? But the total estimate is between, around $50 billion, right, in the last 2 years. So since 2020. And last time I checked, we commencing 12th there. Or I shouldn't say we commencing. Yeah. Last data point basically that I had was about 43 billion inflow per week. So
All right.
it is big numbers right now. And as I said, these are just estimates. It's not a hard fact. I'm not saying that this is exactly how much Swedes are receiving. I think Finland was actually a little bit higher, around 56 billion. Norway slightly less, and then Denmark I think was at 40 odd billion. But still big numbers. Yeah.
Do you by chance have the adoption rate in different countries? So how many people within the country are actually using any cryptocurrencies?
Absolutely. So in addition to the geographies report that you mentioned, we do what we call the crypto adoption index. So that one is looking at, to your point, what countries are adopting it quicker than others. So of course we know that big players in the US, here in the UK, some other regions like Germany, that they all have big crypto adoption, but that's also very much institutional driven. But funny enough, Vietnam was a country that was very much at the top of crypto adoption, and we're seeing other developing countries which may not have the most stable currency, right? They might prefer cryptocurrency, especially stable coins. And we see that those are actually using cryptocurrencies more as a medium of exchange, as opposed to people like in industrialized countries who are, I want to say hodl, but they are making that for more investment purposes. And I guess someone could argue they speculate, but in those developing countries, it is actually a matter of feeding your kids and having a shelter over your head.
Yeah, definitely, and preventing the loss of capital, right? If you have a hyperinflation, for example. But do you recall any data on like the comparison of Sweden or Nordic countries compared to those countries with the highest crypto adoption?
So I'll have to go back and check that. I'll happily get back to you on the exact numbers. I don't want to quote anything that's not correct here. But I think, I broadly look at the adoption in the Nordics. Let's say we see that there has been an exponential curve. I think Ernst & Young and Arcane Capital, they released one for Norway, a commissioned report, and I think there were 420,000 Norwegians now own crypto, right? So that's almost as much, interestingly enough, as people who own shares. And that is, again, very interesting figures. Happy to also share that article with you. A lot of insights. So Sweden, I would be,
So in Norway, so what you're saying is that in Norway, as many people are investing in crypto as the amount of people that are investing in the stock market around it.
Slightly less, but it is on the up. And what's even more interesting is that initially we saw that. Yeah, it was about, men usually between sort of 25 to 35, let's say younger than 40, were the ones investing. Now, the gap actually between men and women is much, it's closing in. I think it's 48-52, just to put a number out there. And also, I think that the gender balance there changing, as well as more and more people getting involved. We see that across the board, right? So it's not just Norway. I think we see that anecdotally. I can say I see that very much in Sweden. Whenever I'm there visiting, I've seen that in Finland. Again, it started as a very sort of CryptoPunk community, which is the same everywhere, right? Early adopters. But now it's I wouldn't say full on mainstream, right? We're still a few years to go if you look at the adoption rate, but we are roughly where the internet was in 1998 or the early 2000s in terms of adoption.
Yeah. Yes, I will try to pull up this graph, this very popular graph, to compare the crypto adoption with internet adoption
Please
throughout
do.
the years, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
So there is one question that I really wanted to ask.
Sure.
We entered a very, let's say, painful period of time in the cryptocurrency life cycle, right? So we dropped from what was it, $70,000
Just
for
below,
one
yeah.
Bitcoin, down to right now I can see 21, roughly above $21,000.
Magic number.
So we magic now. We really crushed down, right? So that does not encourage people to enter the crypto space. But since we were talking about the crypto adoption, I will not dare to ask you about the predictions on the price. Obviously, that's not what gentlemen talk about. But I would like to ask you about your predictions, either personal predictions or Chainalysis predictions about the crypto adoption or where the crypto is going. What do you see? Maybe you see in the data or you see in the tendencies in the market. Where are we going with this whole ship that seems to be sinking a little bit, but it's not going to sink, of course.
Yeah, and I'll be careful now with our wording. Maybe I'll share my personal own opinion, right? So not tied to Chainalysis here, but I think the current macro landscape is looking very bleak, right? If you look at, for example, technical analysis, we are in a really good place to buy. One can argue, but obviously no financial advice here. But looking at the inflation rate right now and the Fed increasing now, last time was with 75 basis points. I think that's not going to be enough to hold inflation, and I think more measures will have to be taken. Combining that with, unfortunately, the current war that's going on and the quantitative easing following COVID, I think, the outlook isn't the best, right? In any investment, I would argue. But I think long term we're looking at, and also, and these are the times during bear markets where the strongest companies survive and the best protocols and the best projects. And I think we are seeing that the ones that are truly meaning business right now, they are just developing. I know there's been a few job cuts in some of the major exchanges, but equally some of the other companies, including ourselves, we are hiring a lot of people, and we are, yes, that we see lower volumes on order books, but that's normal in any market. But I think overall, this is the time where technologically we consolidate and we get together, and I think we're getting ready for the next push. And more and more, I think every day, more or less, you just have to follow the news. It's a new bank, a new asset manager, a new, Fidelity with their 401k in the US, allowing pension savings. And we see new niche use cases, even though we're in a bear market, which for me is very interesting. Of course, this will take time to, truly materialize. But I think, in due course for the next halving, we'll hopefully look at better times.
Yes, and I love to repeat after some great minds that there is no such thing as bear market. We have build market, right? So companies like ours and people that are building, offering exchanges, products, and so on. When there is a bull market and everybody's buying and everything is growing, there is no time to build really, because everybody has so many things to do because there's so many people coming in. Now it's getting calm. Now it's time to build. Now it's time to develop. Now it's time to prepare for this next craziness of cryptocurrency, which 100%. Will for sure come.
Yeah, and you can just resemble the .com crash in 2000, right? And how you pulled it out perfectly. And I have to quote my CEO here, Michael Groninger, when he says that in the early 2000s, he said every company will one day become an internet company. Now the next revolution will be that every company will, in one shape or form, become a blockchain company, whether that's for digital assets, whether that's for blockchain technology itself, which has a whole range of use cases outside of the realm of cryptocurrency. But everyone will, to some extent, and I truly believe him when he says that. And I think this is, arguably one of the greatest inventions, certainly in my lifetime. I would argue even, for thousands of years, and we're just at the beginning, as you can tell.
Yeah. So here, this adoption rate of cryptocurrencies versus adoption rate of internet. If you compare it, which seems to be going a line in line, but here I always see this one that data refers to 2020, which I believe that after the COVID and this, I would expect that there was a tip here, so we probably would have a little bit increase here. But anyway, it goes line in line. If it keeps going like that, crypto is a place to be, and crypto is the future, right?
I mean, preaching to the choir here. I'm totally on board on that. I know there are different opinions out there, and I think in due course people will be warmed up to it. I think some of the stuff that we discussed here today, I think it's important for people to know that it isn't anonymous. It isn't just used for illicit activity. It is a perfectly legitimate use case, and also it provides liquidity to a lot of unbanked and underbanked people all around the world. And I think with the emergence, as the internet still is developing, right, we're only having, I think, about half of the population worldwide now. Just over 3 billion people have access to internet. Imagine when 75% have access to the internet, i.e. have access to a wallet, be able to trade and be their own bank. I think we were going to see, even more exponential curve potentially than what's predicted.
That's fantastic. I almost don't want to say anything else, just to finish the episode with this beautiful statement. But I really believe in that. Daniel, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Let's look into the audience. If there is any question, please write the questions in the comment. We are happy to discuss it here. I'm always happy to hear any news from the crypto world. Where are we going? Are there new products? Are there new trends? We saw last year incredible growth in NFTs space, which seems to be a little bit more quiet right now. Do you have any news with that? While we are waiting for any comments, and then we will wrap it up.
In the NFTs, yeah, absolutely. There was a craze, I think, just around the time where, April last year, I think we saw the biggest sort of volumes, and then slightly going down after sort of the market top, if you call this the market cycle. I think similar to other crypto projects right now, you are seeing that the NFT projects that are really, focusing on the communities, first and foremost, building those out from scratch, I think they are the ones that are going to succeed here now. And I think there are a lot of interesting projects. I appreciate, that might require a whole different episode, and I know we sort of tied on time here, but happy to have that discussion offline or at any other event.
Perfect. Fantastic. I do not see any comments, so we will wrap it up. Daniel, it was an incredible pleasure to have you here in the Safello Show. This was an episode number 25, and with this episode, we are finishing the season. So I have a pleasure to finish the season. We will see you after the summer. We are planning the completely new season. Some news will be here to come. So expect us starting from September. Daniel, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chainalysis, for allowing us to do this episode. And I wish everybody a beautiful Friday and beautiful weekend.
Likewise.